The life and times of a private tick. The first thing you've got to know is they never slink in, sultry and purring like they do in the movies. The old movies. Maybe you don't even know what the hell I'm talking about, depends on your era. But either way, that's a timeless truth. That image is fiction. Typically, a client will call. Sometimes it's an email or a vid, but if they're serious, people are smart enough to know that a call will still get you an immediate response, making it significantly more likely a tick will take the job. If I'm gonna shoot every one of my particles back 50 years through the continuum, at the very least, I want to feel some kind of connection to the person buying me the ticket. Most of all, I want to be certain that they're paying round trip. So yeah, a live voice helps. But just as important, the biggest advantage of speaking over the phone is ID rec software that gets the process moving. Won't work on words on a screen, and again, vids are so infrequent, not much use installing it there, though the reference data would be unquestionably greater. But voice analysis, syntax matrices, and vocab cross-references amply do the trick. The polygraph is a junk add-on though, total bullshit. A real tick always goes with his gut. Once I had her identity verified, I let her continue. Someplace public. Always make the first meeting high profile and in the daylight. Only if you prefer your head someplace above your neck, that is, and you don't have any grips with breathing. It was an unusual case only in the breadth of the crime. Your typical wackadoo aspiring serial only makes it to 2 bodies before he gets sloppy and someone, typically the cron cops, if they can secure a warrant, busts them and preserves the line. This guy somehow made it to 4, 3 women and 1 man unidentified. She wanted me to figure that out, the final Vic's name. I told her what she already knew, that it didn't work like that. If anyone had ever solved it, it would already be in the records. All of this has already happened. Didn't mean, though, that I couldn't play a role in catching him, or at the very least, provide her with whatever first-hand details she may have wanted to know. It's not exactly pleasant work, but if a few snapshots of the grisly aftermath are what it takes for a grade A, Gen Mod yuppie to achieve some sense of closure, or possibly climax. If the screeners forgot to remove a few of those bad genes, who am I to judge if the check clears? Tessa Dunlap Abernathy, Tess. Her parents must have had a not-so-clandestine love affair with late 20th century strippers. Now, looks-wise, she fit the cinema cliches. But then again, like I said, what nucleotide-altered woman with that kind of money didn't nowadays? Eternally engorged lips, flowing auburn curls down to the middle of her back that mockingly flicked off middle age, a waist you could almost fit one hand around, and emerald green eyes that supernaturally caught the light, whatever part of the room she stood in. She was, of course, in a word, gorgeous, but she was equally mundane. I'd taken more jobs from doll people like her than I could possibly remember, and the reason I succeed in this business is because my memory is pretty fucking good. Sadly, Tess here, and all her grafted, ethereal elegance, would be forgotten the moment I took the time to recall my PIN number. Perhaps, I wondered, as I avoided being trapped in those endless emerald whirlpools to admire the titillating grout on the coffee shop floor, I was making it easier on myself that way. A woman like that could never go back in time without uprooting the modern world, but a guy like me, well, I guess I had a face for radio. I was born for this. To my initial surprise, she was nervous. Maybe she hadn't had dealings with my element before, wouldn't be shocked, but she was kind and smiled, which is rare, each time, unconsciously undoing the masterwork of her face's engineer by slowly adding 2 small creases. I couldn't help but focus on them, that I would remember. She had the typical story, nothing I hadn't heard before. Divorcee with a ton of time and even more money after the papers were filed. The children were grown, so now was the time to focus on herself, get back in touch with who she is. Which I suppose means digging through the lives of long-dead people you've never met. Thank the Lord for those genealogy guys. They give me a quarter of my business. I suppose they zero in on the spiciest stories, which is why the scumbags and murderers always float to the top. And then, I suppose, what guilt already comes from teething on a silver spoon gets exponentially amplified when you learn some fucker in your family's past may have murdered, raped, or pillaged to earn said cutlery. Never looked into it myself since, guilt and introspective reflection aren't really my forte. But at the very least, I can follow the psychology. The bedrock of my identity is built upon a rotten, infested foundation. What can I do to set things right? Well, I suppose it makes sense you'd call an exterminator. The pest's name was Ryan Cooper Hands, 4 generations back on her father's side. He didn't earn the clan much of anything save unwanted notoriety, but he was a black spot on the resume that needed to be removed. For the doll people, the name was the most prized piece in the vault, and now that she'd gone back to hers again, the rebirth had to be completely pure. I asked her why she came to me and not the Kron. They'd sweep this up in a jiffy at no cost if she had an artifact to give them. She replied with the one word I hate the most in this biz: destiny. But before I could launch into my diatribe about my inalienable right of choice, causality, and humanity's inherent free will, she powered up her tab and shut me up. My jaw dropped as I stared myself in the face through the blockade of a crime scene in 2013. That time displaced me watching Ryan Cooper hands being handcuffed by conventionals and hauled away. I forgot the really salient point I was ready to make about free will, as I took another 30 seconds to help my brain digest the full-course meal of the image before me. Touché, Tess, coffee's on me. The next few steps were simple, and since I knew, for a fact now, that I'd be going for the ride, I didn't have to worry about acing the bureaucracy. I filed a petition for chronal displacement under the auspices of criminal investigation and gave them my license number. No muss and nothing tricky. It'd take the standard 8 to 10 days as the chrono ran a temporal integrity check to make sure no one had previously jumped to that particular moment and started fraying spacetime's precious fabric. Too many tachyons swirling about one particular era and shit gets weird, or so we're told. Wormholes, singularities, bad shit in capital letters. But since I found myself walking out the door with gravity securing my dad's shitty loafers snugly to the ground, and I wasn't at the moment being eternally stretched into an infinite string of human spaghetti, it would seem as if no one had fucked up quite that badly yet. So I went speedily on my way, supremely confident in my inevitable stamp of approval. And not that I usually do, but I didn't give the matter one more moment's thought, thanks to that picture. And with my mind sunny and free, I could devote the sum of my attention to packing for my trip. The research was fairly straightforward. I'd been 5 years out from that era before in both directions, but it's something of an exact science picking out a wardrobe. Reference photos help. Lord knows enough freelance jumpers have made a quick buck documenting humanity through the ages for the evolving scientific database. But with clothes, you have to be careful. Come down in a pair of Jordans circa 2 years in the relative future, particularly in the city, and you're gonna be noticed. And it's gonna be a problem. Arrive in a Von Dutch hat 5 years past the trend and you really stand out for crooked looks or an ass-kicking. So rule of thumb is it's best to play it safe and just buy generic. For example, you'd have better luck arriving in the early aughts in a full cowboy outfit than a FUBU jacket, because at least people's first instinct would be that you were in costume, and not that you're a man displaced in time. Luckily though, around 2010, the retro fashions grow back in style, so anything from the late 70s to the 90s, provided they can still be made polyester, is a no-go, won't garner too much attention for the ensuing 10 years. This is very much a blessing, since skinny jeans, literally and figuratively, never suited me or my shot putter's ankles, and bell-bottoms are therefore my close personal friends. But why try for anything too risky when Lewis will have you covered for 4 decades and you only need one pair? I make the call and choose to pack light. All the other gear was a little more heavy-duty than the shit I'd take on a baseline jaunt. Again, I'd bested my share of sickos, but this batter had talent, so I wasn't about to take any chances. Typically, most jumps for most ticks aren't like this at all. Half the time, you're going back, stalking an old lady for a few weeks to see which Ottoman grandma dashed away the inheritance in. Or following up on that other old lady's hunch that her hubby wasn't at the poker game the night he came home reeking of off-brand Chanel. Going generic not really much help to anyone at that moment. Yeah, that was the usual grind, upper crust gossip and junior paparazzo academy training, dutifully sorting the patrician refuse. We aren't called ticks just for the shitty time pun. Blue blood is all we live on. But that was all right, 'cause a little blood never fazed me, and neither did a lot. In fact, I could guess the fastest way did the man in that picture was by asking around which PI would be game for something like this. Smart wager would have my name surface in the top 3. Some guys are born assholes looking for a fight, former cron types who miss the action with an unquenchable case of tachyon thirst. Others, they just use what they were given to help them make their way. Usually through someone else. Me, I'm somewhere in between if I don't think too hard about it, and I'm sober. But there's no such thing as bad marketing in this or any business, so I'll take whatever reputation sticks. So therefore, if my calling card reads rough and tumble, I'll do my best to leave the paying customer satisfied. But implying a hunt like this, even across decades, takes any kind of skill as a PI blowing smoke up your ass or trying to get laid. They don't come to me because I'm trained in forensics or earned a master's in criminal psychology. That's not how you win this war. I leave that shit to the cron, who always get the first shot at patching up the fabric's worn, loose ends. Like I said, what we do is clean up the mess. And when you're a janitor, all you really need is the right broom. I beat these inbred butchers and kitty rapists by being in all ways an evolved state of man with superior firepower. I have tech and a 4/prior knowledge to track, snuff, and tag any paleolith you'll sick me on, no matter how clever or deranged. Because even the smartest Neanderthal is just a Neanderthal. He's using shale and 2 sticks when I'm bringing a flamethrower. I ran down the list and tested the weight. My bags were ready. And that was that. I didn't need to waste my time peering into his childhood, finding the root of his malfunction. When he was touched where he was touched by daddy, mommy, or weird Uncle Tony, it's almost always weird Uncle Tony. Whether it was too much love that smothered him, or not enough that deadened him, or a mutant neuroguilin gene that tried, convicted, and sentenced him from the moment he came into this world and 9 months before. Fuck it. The fact of the matter is he did what he did and paid it forward before he chose to put a bullet in his brain or that same knife through his own trachea. So frankly, I don't much care about the story behind it, just how it all ends. And if I had to venture a guess by the way she spat out the aftertaste of his name, Tessa Dunlap Abernathy didn't really give 2 shits either. To my utter shock and surprise, the application sailed through. For a week now, that ancient image of my future had embedded in every gray crevice and wrinkle of my brain. With my passport stamped, I went back to the Chronos, paid their pound of flesh, and gave them the address of where to drop my lockbox ahead of my arrival, along with the recovery fee for after the job was done. Then I put out the fire in my pocket. The only thing left to acquire that was out of my hands was the artifact. See, tachyons are dumped into the machine's particle accelerator before blasting your lucky ass out into the ether. And the faster they travel before they throw you your strike, the farther back you're able to go. So your destination era is mostly a product of velocity, but we're talking differentials in fractions of a millimeter per microsecond, translating to months or years with each teensy bump in acceleration. So sure, you'll touch down in the 78, but did you pack enough antique, legal tender to make it for the 6 months until your mission date arrives? Did you bring enough sens tabs to keep you from going insane, when all you've got to live on is a 2-dimensional glass screen blaring something unspeakable called the love boat into your eyeballs that seems to have completely bedeviled the masses? No, jaunts are vacations, not sabbaticals. No tick in his right mind, your textbook heavy-breathing Temerophile excluded, would do this job no matter what the pay, if sitting around navel-gazing in a time before lattes and the internet, let alone Neuronet, were part of the bargain. So to make sure jumps are more precise than your average cockeyed dart throw, you need an artifact assembled as closely to the date that you're shooting for to help the infernal machine better home in. Newspapers are always the best, but once those go extinct, things get trickier until the world gets comfortable enough with data stamping everything to start keeping better records. The big heads say it all relies on a process called quantum entanglement, for the tachyons they've generated in the present to call back to the particles surrounding the artifact and their original era. Apparently, gluons from one end of spacetime can interact with gluons on the other in a way that makes all things connected, preserving the line and its fabric. A smarter man might take comfort and even see something beautiful in that all things through all time are always connected. But for me, it's more proof of just how fucking weird the world is. I guess this is why the Chronos and governments don't really worry about people going back. In addition to your Poindexter, Kumbaya, Circle of Life, mumbo jumbo, which, buy it or not, has brought me back safely from 23 chronological displacements, just too shy of my free sandwich, unless you've managed to knick-knack together your own particle accelerator with spare microwave parts. Not many people are gonna be able to Bill and Ted around the universe on 3-day weekends. Booking an accelerator, as you can imagine, is a pretty steel penny, with charges exponentially increasing by the megajoule the farther back you want to surf. So far, no one's been able to zip tachyons fast enough to send anything back past 1951, as far as the record shows. But I guess, Who's to say some Swedes haven't built a collider the size of Helsingborg underground somewhere and sent their canniest politicians to a front row seat on someone's face in a Caligulan orgy? But even so, the timeline stays preserved. That's probably the biggest reason the Chrono says, fuck it. If it happened, it was our history, so we'd never know the difference, cause there was none. Difference, that is, this is it, what always would have been. Intellectually, the big fear your typical lefty group or fringe chronologist looking to scrounge up new grant money is gonna squawk on about is someone going back and single-handedly putting their kick somewhere it so absolutely, positively didn't belong that the entire course of human civilization ends up getting spontaneously ear-fucked. Maybe they're right. Maybe there should be more watchdogs or something a hair more intimidating than a 12-sheet application process. Though tell me the last time you filled out a paper document by hand, and then get back to me on how gentle a tickle in the ass that is. But hell, for all we know, maybe it was an amped-out tick who put one in the Archduke of Austria, or Oswald was really a joy-jumping, rich dilettante, whose magic bullet didn't originate from a grassy knoll, but four-dimensional space. But all that said, it's hard to argue with one simple fact. We're still here. There's a story. It's the reason why chronos check for tachyon saturation and little else along the line, a well-worn parable that both exemplifies and justifies their unparalleled yup, that is absolutely a time pun laziness. In the early days of jumping, a physicist, one of the pioneers of the tech, which afforded him access, insisted on taking all the risks involved in testing by volunteering himself. For a long time, only a few of his colleagues monitoring the controls knew what he was up to. Legend goes he'd grip this old, crumpled-up paper swan, crayon feathers worn and faded along the wings. Then he'd vanish and reappear instantly. It's how this works. At first determined for the next jump, and then more withdrawn, then detached, and then one time, wet, exhausted, and inconsolable. That was when the alarms must have finally triggered in those oversized craniums that made room to pack in everything but tiny morsels of common sense. They ripped him out of the chair, and someone went back, prying the swan from him once they got him sedated. 11 years earlier, on a lake in rural Minnesota, 14 versions of the physicist blinked in and out of time like spectral fireflies to haplessly watch their 8-year-old son expire on the mudded bank. According to his colleague, there was nothing he could do, no tool he could bring, no faster he could swim or sooner he could dive. Nothing in those 14 tries that could save that boy. And each subsequent copy of the man grew more disoriented. Slower, fumbling, more confused as he witnessed more arriving versions of himself fail their son time and time again. According to his coworker, number 14 just sat along the bank, watching, witnessing, remembering the scene all at once, for a while completely unsure of which he was and when he'd come from, and all the while the EM bubbles grew more and more unstable as they burst through the air like popped balloons. In his report, the scientist wrote that he saw waves starting to ripple along the lake's water, indicating the beginnings of a gravitational anomaly. It was time to go and never come back, and though it was never exactly a scientifically proven hypothesis, the emotional impact of the story was a strong enough psychic jolt to the public consciousness to forever settle the debate. The past was immutable, and we are, all of us, puppets dancing along invisible strings. Turns out Tess had secured a "Have you seen my puppy?" ad from the era. One of those things that used to get tacked to the things they used to have to use to make those other things they once actually called telephones work. The past is like an alien galaxy. Sometimes, I swear, you need to see it to believe it. I'm guessing someone took it down to call the pet's owner 'cause they found the thing and then just forgot to toss it. More than half a century later, a relative finds it in their grandpa's storage after he croaks. And suddenly, it might be worth something as news of scientists harvesting elementary particles that can travel back in time has the world all hot and bothered. Or at least, that's what I'm hoping for the doggie's sake, cause that's not a case I'm about to fucking take. It was a lucky find, since the where obviously is just as important as the when for the artifact. A nickel minted in San Francisco in 1984 doesn't do much good if you've got a job for me in Atlanta, unless you're willing to comp the obscene, ancient travel expenses, along with the small vet's clinic of horse tranquilizers and quaaludes, aka the one thing the past got right, it would take to strap me into one of those projectile air coffins. Last I cracked open my thesaurus, rough and tumble wasn't yet synonymous with suicidal. But walking into the facility, it was actually my complete lack of anxiety that was notable. I'd been around the block enough times, I figured, but it was always nice to have even a little bump of an edge before you start the show. But not this time. Maybe it was the reassurance of the photo that had taken all the juice out of it, or maybe it was just that the thrill was gone. I filed that thought to the back of my mind for a future identity crisis. But either way, all of it beats poking like I did my first go-round and forever ruining a $5,000 Save Ferris vintage t-shirt. This time, it'll just be the smell of Axe body spray I'll have to acclimate to, which honestly might give my gag reflex a better run for its money. But I liked retro Chicago despite the shitty pizza. Did 2 jobs there already in '67 and '95. It's better when you know the place. One mystery's enough for your plate. They check my vitals before the final screening. Baseline hypertension. Thanks, Pop. I slip back into his shoes and pull up my shorts, abruptly cutting short the nurse's ocular Mardi Gras. That's a joke. She's 1,700 pounds and her eyes were manufactured by Toshiba. I'm gonna miss this place. As they buckle me in, I notice that they reupholstered the chair since the last time I was here. New cushions. Easier on the neck when things start to shake. I'm grateful. Sometimes it's the little things. I stare out at Tess behind the glass and radiation shield while the scientists and lesser creatures scuttle around but never quite cross within her aura. She's holding the picture. My mind flashes to another time within this chair. I don't know why. This case. Well, this one wasn't wrote. Another woman, blonde, hazel eyes, but another Xerox goddess all the same, stormed into my office and embraced me. Not as wonderful a feeling as you'd think when you're 90% sure you're having a stroke. Heard I lost an aunt that way. Stroke. Not to beautiful woman's embrace. That be how she lost my uncle, and what gave her the stroke in the first place. We're a classy lot. After she stopped shaking and I got through slapping myself what I deemed a sufficient amount, I eventually pried the story out of her between the Tourette's of thank yous. Turns out I saved her on a case, or I would once she got around to actually hiring me. That's why she was here today, to close the loop. She handed me the business card I'd given her somewhere in her past and in my future. I smirked, and for a brief sec I was the one shaking. It was eerie to be thanked for a job well done you hadn't yet decided to do. She gave me money, technically, payment on service rendered specifically to go back and help her, sparing her, if not from death, then the thing some find worse. Suddenly, I felt embarrassed about smelling her hair. It was the only time I skipped the background check, probably because the money was good, that card was mine, and no one on earth is that good of an actress. Though if there were ever a time to be sure I wasn't getting strung and fleeced, I'm thinking that would be a good tick always leads with his gut, no matter how queasy while walking. I went back just a few weeks. She was lucky, really, that paper records had come back in style recently with a culture accustomed to jumping. Her artifact was a parking receipt. I only had to butcher a few hours, so I had a drink or 3, like a true professional, and thought too long about it. For hours, it all came back to one notion. What if I stayed here drinking? What in the world in the eternal breadth of the universe would happen then, if one man sat and nursed his beer? But I was a tick, so there was no fundamental force in this or any other undulating brain that was gonna prevent me from at least seeing it start, verifying that all this was even true. That wasn't gonna happen. Ticks are 12% Scotch, 18% severe childhood psychological trauma, and 89% curious. We're also mostly undereducated. I had to have a look-see. I rounded the corner of the alleyway, nothing too ominous, but enough concealment behind the dented steel dumpster to build a small den of nightmares if you were determined. As far as I could see, though, it was quiet. She'd given me the time roughly to the minute. You don't forget a thing like that, I suppose, but apparently I'd actually instructed her. My head spun a little, till my sights rested on the other side of the crossing. And I thought, deliberately this time, what if I just walked away? What if I alone, by my choosing, defied the law, both nature's and man's, and went about my way, down my own determined path? Just who up there could stop me? And as I thought these things, I heard the click and scrape of heels worth more than my mortgage before the punctuation of one loud, but muffled, shriek. And I saw my feet before the cut of those grander, murkier notions had finished its final revolution through my frontal lobe, flying to shove the edge of that dumpster forcefully against the skull of that thing that called itself a man, giving the dumpster one more dent. And just like that, the job was done. I dejavued my past and her future as she sprang up, gave the sleeping, oozing thing a kick, and sobbed against me through a fierce, quaking embrace. I stood there, limp as a shiatsued eel carcass against her, trying to process what just happened, to focus in on the feeling of whatever it was that got my feet to move before my brain was ready. Whatever it was that compelled me and made me certain, fucked and for all once I saw it happening, that it was always out of my hands. It was the closest thing I'd ever felt to the touch of the hand of fate, but it was enough. It was enough to know that something was there, tapping on my shoulder. It was reassuring and it was terrifying because I had no real idea where my will stopped and it began, or if even they were somehow both just one and the same, the only faces of an intricately cut jewel a darkened light and shittier vision would ever let us see. I never felt a thing like that again. But it was nice to leave it, knowing, somewhere deep beyond the piled-on sediment of cynicism and self-loathing, that I was still on the right end of things, even when I was at rock bottom. Most important, it was the closest thing to definitive proof I could ever hope to get that the old man was full of shit. And that thought probably reminded me that I had a job to do and a persona to market. I calmed her down, fixed her makeup, and handed her my card. I could not stress enough how important it was that she find me and remember to tell me about what happened here. And when I gave her the time, she diligently wrote it down, nodding through incrementally smaller gulps of air. It seemed, for some strange reason, she trusted me. And I realized I'd just made the single greatest advertising pitch in human history. As the chair starts to shake the metal, first that familiar rattle of the electromagnetic field booting up, Tessa Dunlap Abernathy stares at me with eyes that say the very same. Thank you for something I've already done but haven't yet decided to do. In the final microsecond, I drop the cynicism before they dice the atom. I'm gonna miss this place. Electric current bursts all around me, but thankfully never through me. Their coils are kept at bay by the EM field as they outline its invisible spherical mass with their impotent bluster. I knew a guy growing up like that. Even with the goggles on, it's more light than I can take, and the earplugs are a joke against the wail of the machine in labor. Still, though, what can only be a trained ear hears the hatch come down from the accelerator tube before the whole word goes white and gone. The cliché would be that it feels like being born, but death feels more appropriate. It's much more a process of being ripped away from all existence than it is of being introduced to the world. Everything, mercifully including your senses, leaves you as the bubble slips from the cliff of the curved edge of space into some non-place you can't comprehend before snagging the rim of reality again. It's one hell of a half-pipe double backflip. And then you land again, softer than you'd expect, at a place back along the continuum somewhere before your starting line, where it always, for the very first instant of touchdown at least, feels as if that's where you always were. The navigation centers of your brain refusing to buy the laughable, half-baked story your higher functions and memory are trying to force-feed it, that you're a future man. But then, if you can hold your lunch, the next few seconds always prove very critical. Well, thankfully, I'm a pro, now one jump away from a free sandwich I'm half sure I could eat during the next jaunt, so upchucking isn't a threat. My head and feet are clear. Time for an impact assessment. See, the beauty of the EM is that it protects you and any incalculably unlucky civilians from doing too much damage on arrival, same as it did in transit from being ripped to confetti by TACVON bombardment. The field rebuffs most solid objects to help avoid impact. It also does you the handy solid of preventing ionic phasing, where matter merges with other matter if it jumps into a shared space with an object in the past. Sounds painful, so physically it's a relatively safe ride wherever your artifact dumps you, unless you somehow land over water. Then I suppose you are very fucked, but next time for an artifact, don't go for the shrimp boat trawl net maybe. Now mentally though, that's another issue. The EM's useless there, and it's not so much a problem for you once you pop your temporal displacement cherry, as it will be for the courier who nearly wrecked his 14-speed witnessing you materialize into existence from previously empty space. There's no amount of what is it this era salvia that's gonna sufficiently explain that away, and no shortage of therapy sessions that will ever stop trying or charging. The kid sputters something I can't make out before coming over to me as quick as nervous, freaked the fuck out feet will carry him. I forget I'm still wearing earplugs. He's nice enough to use his novelty-size phone to dial for help rather than share a video, and he's taken it pretty easy on the body musk. He's a good kid. I reward him with a 3-second pulse from my circulizer just beneath his chin. He drops and wiggles. I watch for a second to make sure he doesn't chomp his tongue. Nope, small miracles. He's about to feel like he's going into cardiac arrest before he eventually blacks out. It's summer, so I'm hoping the docs will blame it on heat stroke, riding too hard. That'd be enough to cover the hallucinations. Worst case scenario, They shove him repeatedly through their big, brain-cancering tube like a hot dog on defrost, trying to bust the ghost of an aneurysm that was never there. Really, it's a 50-50 shot with the overpriced chicken bone diviners and stethoscopes this time non-sarcastically calls doctors. But you know, those odds are good enough for me to walk away in search of a way to make them better, somewhere at the end of a bottle. And that's the absolute greatest thing about Chicago. I swear, there's a bar on every block. I double-checked to make sure there wasn't a second spotter and flee the scene. He'll be okay, probably. They eye my Jansport a little funny, but I can tell it's the kind of bar where they don't ask too many questions, which is good. Last thing I want is to chat up a stone-sober barkeep with an ear for detail. Too rusty right now for verbal judo at the Olympic level. No, I'm here to listen. And oh yeah, drink. Jumping always gives me a raging infanticidal mother of a headache for the first half an hour. Drinking dials it down to something more along the lines of my loopy Aunt Rose, a real bitch. But manageable. I order a Guinness and a cheeseburger with minimal slang and listen to everything but the pounding in my skull, picking up pitch, cadence, vocabulary, and inflection. I skip the accents. I'm not putting on dinner theater. I'm allowed to be from somewhere else, just not somewhere else. And besides, these people sound like what some wizard would get if he gave Tugboat's sentence, which really does wonders for that pounding. I hear enough after an hour to reach the verdict that the 20-teens aren't so awful, or rather, could be worse. The 90s were a lot more out there, with the virus of trendy gibberish infecting the host lexicon, using TV for its primary carrier, not to mention all the stupid-ass hats. I mean, sure, the men here resemble anorexic lumberjacks that specialize in clearing off-map, microforests, and some of the women intentionally aim to look like Amazons who quit when they heard about the part with the boob. I suppose something about global warming in this period severely heats just one half of the head. But fashion is every generation's albatross, I've discovered. Seems the first hints of decorum and general self-awareness don't manifest in the human psyche until somewhere around 50. Though most of my pals here are probably a bit more self-aware than they'd care to be, and making active efforts to fix that, to escape. I don't dwell too long on any personal poignancy there. I've got my own distractions. Christ, I miss trans fats. I'm wiping a bright pink mix of Heinz and Hellmann's off my stubble when, suddenly, I'm thrown into a sparring qualifier with an opponent more worthy than the bartender. My repugnant trademark snark aside, there are elements to this era, other than the obvious, that I'll admit to finding somewhat intoxicating. And one of those elemental primal distractions just took the free seat right next to me. I don't try to read too much into it other than opportunity, and in the back of my head, an annoying little voice I quickly seek to bind, anchor, and drown starts to question my real reason for being here. I won't deny that there's an unquestionable appeal to the women in these times. In one word, it's variety. The differences, flavors, and options of size, style, and body type, the visual panorama of perfect imperfection. It's like first seeing color and enough to make your head spin, and your parts pound worse than any jump, believe me. When you come from a world full of machine-minted copies as your gold standard, and a widening class of hoi poll, clawing to be their funhouse reflection via installment plan. You sort of forget how nature originally planned things out. I guess, unlike fashion, a misogynistic patriarchy has held pretty steady through the ages. But it's just nice to experience a time when you couldn't pay a price to have all its tenets so perfectly enforced, all the way down to the genome. She breaks the ice by asking what I'm drinking. I'm secretly a little sore about the missed opportunity. My line would have been a hell of a lot more interesting. First, I've heard of the brand, but my pronunciation holds. My toes start to tingle. There's that thrill, better late than never. Clearly, I'm a drunken savant. I offer her a round and start shaking off the cobwebs. I pretend that I'm getting practice in at blending in, that this will help the mission, that I haven't done this 100, 1,000, 100,000 times before, that this isn't second nature, truer nature. But it's as much a game with myself as the one I play with her. But it was always that way with people of any era, a thing I probably owe more to my father than my bar tab. If I hear the song once, I can play it them right on cue, and it's not a challenge of can I do it, but how quickly, how effectively, and how deeply she'll believe it. I run through all the options in my head as I improvise, this time donning the pliable skin of a consumer protection advocate. Not quite sure if that's partly true or not, or even honestly a completely real thing, but I find it suitably creative and an outfit I've never worn before. I push my backpack under my stool. The thrill holds steady, but finding the rhythm happens too easy. As I keep her hydrated, I whet her appetite for more of me with predictions, knowledge, and theories of things never before spoken in the world that exponentially broaden her addled, primitive mind, and her bank account if she'd pay enough attention, giving her a solid 4-star, "Hey, I'm a little drunk" collegiate lecture of a semester's worth of material in under an hour. Suddenly, I feel less bad as I consider that buying her free beer is a hell of a refinanced tuition price. But that was the issue. It wasn't the booze-based numbness, now well on to conquering my fingertips, that prevented me from feeling a thing. All that helped me do was to think of it less. The truth, that who she was, where she was from, what she wanted to be, and even what she was saying to me at this very single second. None of it mattered a good goddamn to me more than the cut of her dress and its willful determination to ride slowly up her bare thigh. I look around as her words slur out to ears that might as well stayed plugged, and I cast my verdict. They were not, a single one of them, real people. They were ghosts, all long dead. Being here, to me, was like walking through one of those cardboard suburbs they made for atomic testing, strolling along a defunct era as the only actual living thing for an experiment of the atom all my own. I was not a part of it, any of it. I was beyond. I could tip the tables. I could punt the plastic dog, set fire to the hand-sewn drapes already all destined to go up in flames. I could do to them whatever I wanted without any consequence as far as I or anyone who would one day matter could tell. This entire world is my playground, and I'm not just king of the mountain. I am God. Then that amber tide breaks, and obscene, private notions recede once again into the depths of the subconscious, where they belong. And I realize for a second that was the closest I would come to understanding Ryan Cooper hands, and I make sure of it. She drapes her arm around me, mistaking my quivering for being cold rather than a little more dead, and I order us a final round to help us figure out a way to more efficiently drown our sorrows and slay loitering demons. She didn't live too far away. I told myself I needed it as much as she did, and at least that wasn't a lie. Maybe I'd officially hit my limit on those. The account was closed from too much withdrawal activity. Well, I'd better get used to it, okay. Maybe I'm just an asshole. I watch her as she sleeps and I dress, and I acknowledge I've done worse. To women and these phantom, cardboard people, that is. I think the ridiculous thought of the kid still there, writhing over asphalt, and I pray that nobody took his bike. There were times when I chose to leave less elegantly. Just in case, drugs I still carry you can drop in a drink or shove directly down an esophagus that will turn you into a ghost yourself, make you disappear like something that was never there, so that they'll lose an hour for every milligram. Never felt good about those, but that's the job. And you're not a god as much as a sideshow magician who's really just a man behind that curtain. And sometimes you drink too much and you slip up and say something that can compromise you past the game's playful point, to one of no return, until they catch the scent and won't let up till the truth is snared between their teeth and dragged out screaming for the world to see, and you're forever blowing bubbles in a sanitarium. Or you leave your bag to take a leak and she's playing with a holotel phone you can't just say you got from Japan. Or more likely than all the rest, the drug's just easier than telling some sort of person who died before you were born an empty, pointless thing like goodbye. You choose to keep it professional. She snores a little below me while I finish buttoning my shirt out completely. Not sure how much of that is me and how much was the tap. I look on the floor as if I am leaving something behind, the notion scratching persistently against some spot on my brainstem, but without any picture coming clear. It's annoying. I scan around for Dad's shoes. Was that it? They don't fit well snug. Maybe my feet have swollen. Alcohol can really fuck up your body. Pop could tell you that better than anyone. The night air is refreshing enough you forget it's toxic in this backwards time when vehicles sputtered out more fumes than tire fires. But I need to cool down. I try not to think too hard about the fact that I can't remember her name already. In the morning, that will be a blessing. I check my pack. I'm pretty good on air attender. Could have brought more to be safe. Tracking that shit down is a real rabid gerbil up your ass. Only a few brokers I can trust won't give me counterfeit. Not worth the risk from the things I've heard about prison these decades, since I'm pretty satisfied with my colon at its current circumference. And Dennis was giving me a real bullshit exchange rate a week ago. So much for customer loyalty, the prick. And though I obviously cover local currency as part of my service fee, why rip the doll off just to fatten the menace's pocket? No better move is to bring something relatively or undetectably at least timeless to pawn after touchdown. Not timeless as inexpensive, But timeless as in its era of origin isn't consequential or identifiable. Shit they still make the same way in the future. I told her silverware, clocks, jewelry, that kind of thing. She handed me a pearl necklace. I told her that would do. I won't lose nearly as much in conversion if I swap it here and now. But I assured her it was only for emergencies and that she'd more than likely see it back. Wrote her up a little insurance card even to prove I wasn't full of it. But better safe than stranded. I'm tracking a maniac, remember, so you never know if a sudden plane ticket, or surgery, first one's still worse, might be in order. But I keep it in my lockbox, which I go to check on for the first time since drop-off. Still intact, obviously, maybe not quite a third of the way full. The things you'll see. I place the necklace inside and then I remember seeing it here before. Despite myself, I caught glimpses of it on other jumps a few years out and closer to my future. It's kinda hard to miss. Nice to know it doesn't get stolen, and that I won't have to pay that insurance. But I always wondered why it was there and who it really belonged to. Well, now I know, and I'd say finding out was worth the wait. I chalk that up as another case closed before I do the same for the lockbox and set the combination. Numbers, how quaint. A lot of people ask me if you can time shift, why bother doing any kind of job at all? Why not just open an account in 1959 and collect your interest lottery ticket in the present? Well, not a bad proposition. But the chronos are 2 steps ahead of you. They're monitoring everything on the line, especially that which involves the hint of a cent of a rumor of money. And if you leave an account, specifically, untouched for too long, it becomes forfeit. And guess who gets to collect? So yeah, even if you're here on pleasure, you better at least pretend to have some business. Or the chronos will sniff you out, and your trip to the past won't end up being very much of either. Oh, and don't even get me started on trying to smuggle something away on the return trip. By now I'm sick of walking. I choose some place small and tucked away, partly 'cause it's cheap, partly 'cause it's nowhere, and mostly because it makes me feel like PI. The more busted letters on the motel neon, the better. It's tradition, and you can only get the authentic experience on these jumps in these eras. I pay cash and they don't bat an eye. ID is a foreign word. Perfect. For all I know, the place is another form of cash trap run by Kron, but I don't care. I just need a bed without another body. I wake up with a fire in my chest in the middle of the night. I can't swallow stale air quick enough. Nice. My pillow's drenched. I claw for my bearings and come up empty-handed. Jet lag. Normally, the first night post-transit, I get disoriented and wake up thinking I'm still in my apartment, in my old bed, in my own time, the real time which still marches on somewhere without me. A more civilized but far less interesting world. But this time I am sure I'm back at her place. That I was sleeping there the entire time. And then I realized what I was stepping over on her floor as I quickly, and even more quietly, showed myself the door. It was the face of a consumer protections advocate from Ohio. It was the skin of the person I'd shed and left behind. And I understood, I admitted, maybe consciously for the first time, since this jump at least, why I was really here, longing for a roach motel I was so certain I deserved. Maybe each time I somehow think it will be different, that a light will flick on called virtuous switch mounted to that itchy part in the back of my mind and all will be as right as rain. And I'll do this for the client, for justice, for the world and the line, and not for me. But that was the dream, and now I was awake, drowning in my own sweat. My eyes were open, and the only thing I saw there in that room with me was the truth, that every time I go back is a chance to start over for a new beginning and a new me. Whoever I want to be, whoever I could have been and should have been back in the place where and when it mattered in the real world, not this dead facsimile. I was all those things here, on a whim, in an instant. In this place with each trip, I was every possibility and anything I dared set my imagination on. Anything but me. That was the vacation, that's why I left. On a job when I go back all I was and am or ever failed to be doesn't exist. Because here it hasn't happened yet. Here I'm never really me. It was never them I ever wanted to control, that I needed power over. That was the story of a man somewhere out there with 3 names and 4 victims. No, it was and always has been about me. And the next morning I was going to wake up, put on my shoes and prove that. The difference. Tomorrow I would start the hunt. The next morning I don't think too hard about the man. There's nothing I can do. If I had or will found anything out, I would have passed the info to the conventionals when I handed hands over for the arrest. But I know I don't, because in the future he remains unidentified. So what's the point investigating? Probably someone they discover back at whatever subterranean cave this beast calls a home, body too decomposed to lift any records, or maybe just a hapless vagrant. Who knows? It's completely out of my hands, but thankfully I've got a better lead. Marjorie Janice Brown, the second victim, body discovered at 4:55 p.m. later today around the intersection of North Dearborn and West Ontario. I realize now that I'm pacing. I only do that when my tick's gut has indigestion. All my logic centers know it's futile, but I strongly consider slapping away fate's nagging hand from its perch, thrumming a rhythm across my shoulder. I don't know, something's recently stirred in me. I make the call and my stomach settles. My shoulder's free. I'll get there early, a stakeout. And no matter how many hours I have to wait, I'm going to try to get the jump on this bastard and save Marjorie's life. I load up with everything I've got. Helioflares, EM pulsars, delirials, racket rounds, magbuns, and my handy-dandy circulizer. He's Jack the Ripper, and I'm a goddamn Jedi. Again, no need to pull a mental muscle figuring out his next moves. I know them all. I switch off and sufficiently stash my telesponder, which helped break my pacing by granting me access to anything ever broadcast in this year. They may be a lot of warmongering, homophobic planet killers, but they damn sure know how to TV, even without phonics. I boot up my map, double-lock the door, and officially punch the clock. The chase is on, and I thank my lucky stars my target's name is Ryan Cooper Hands and not Walter White. I may apprehend serial killers, but my work itself isn't too exciting. The cross streets are a 24-minute bus ride out from the motel, and the only trick to the rest is not getting spotted as I set up shop. Future tech has its disadvantages that way. It's something of a busy intersection, which comes as a surprise to me given that it's about to be the location of an alleged future homicide, in broad daylight, no less, so it takes 15 minutes for the coast to clear and give me an opening. I don't need much. My metamaterial blanket does the work for me. I switch on the current and my skin turns to brick, at least to anyone walking by. I clear out of the way of foot traffic, hunker down, and try my hardest not to sneeze for the next 4 hours. I could have brought a few Sens tabs, but I need to stay sharp. I spend the bulk of my time trying to figure out how Skylar's gonna react when she finally meets Heisenberg, as I wager all my hopes, dreams, and Marjorie's life on the full potential of the original uncertainty principle. One free nurse and 15 minutes later I have my answer, right on time. At 4:41 p.m. Marjorie Brown heads down Ontario toward me. I power it down and rip off my cloaking blanket, not really giving 3/4 of a fuck who sees me. The hairs rise along my neck and I roll 2 live racketrowns nervously in my right hand's palm. I'm ready for everything. I'm already time sensitive and the seconds tick away like hours, especially at the pace she's moving. Walking in heels is not her strong suit. She has a gingerly hobbling gait, and she's tugging at her waistband awkwardly. I can't imagine being a woman. I scan around and the street is empty. So far, so good, until she nearly slips on something wet that wasn't there before. Oh God. She walked, he didn't do it here. This is just where they found her. I check my watch, 4:43 p.m. where I found her. Marjorie Brown takes her final step before collapsing across the pavement, her fighting through. I race to her with lead feet in mocking loafers, more than reluctant to go and verify the truth. My shoulders are heavy once again. She struggles to keep her gaze on me against more convincing protest from her eyelids. But still, she somehow finds a way to extend a hand and unfurl 3 fingers out to me. I stare at them and then take a big step backwards from the swelling puddle she spilled beneath her. I can't touch her. I can't help. I can't be anywhere near this because I was never here. I patch into the emergency dispatch feed to reroute all drivers directly, but I'm riding out a loser's hand. A lateral incision at least 6 inches deep into the abdomen. He gutted her. I want to give her something, comfort, assurance, that goddamn picture. Any proof at all that the monster that savaged and mutilated her won't get away. But all I can convey is rage, and that isn't what she needs. She closes her eyes and enters the darkness alone, all parts of me shaking against better sense to fuck the rules, wade into her agony and hold her tight until it's done. It's the only thing I want after his head as an antique conversation piece, but I can't risk giving it to her. The muscles in those fingers slacken and fall as I resign to failing her again. Maybe it's a side effect of one dip too many into the time stream, but I think I hear fate chuckle slightly as it cuts away her strings. No, it's the sirens, and they're my cue until I clock from the corner of my eye a flash of movement down street 100 feet ahead. He stares at me and I don't have to see that he's smiling. I can feel it in my bones, And I shudder, more from the flare of a white-hot, vengeful wrath than the primal fear that a thing like that shares 99.9% of my DNA. He lingers more than he should, high, drunk, and more than likely engorged by the sight and ramifications of his handiwork. He listens to the symphony's crescendo. They're almost here. A crosswalk sign changes across the street, and I need to be gone. He still watches, wondering what I'll do. My one advantage is that I know everything about him. But for Ryan Cooper hands, I'm a defect puzzle piece. I'm a total mystery, and most certainly not part of the plan. I update my ample database on him by stealing a quick sample from Marjorie with my biometric analyzer. His DNA will be all over it, which means that I will be all over him. I feel that once-chilling smile fade completely. He doesn't like that. I let him evaporate into the sea of bodies flooding the crosswalk, actively coursing with life. They must all profoundly offend him. My thinking's simple. I don't want to startle my prey and send him running out of state at the sight of my comforter of invisibility. It's torturous and frustrating, but I let my gut make the call. This is the action I would take, and it will lead me to him. I leave Marjorie Brown alone again, stepping slowly to quiet my father's shoes. I cannot look back. The EMTs, with their kit of thumbtacks, glue, and popsicle sticks, arrive just in time to meet a freshly dead woman. I'll let them figure out an introduction. I head back to the motel. For a moment, I wonder if that was premeditated or a crime of random opportunity. The thoughts of a real detective, the kind of thoughts that will drive you insane. I find my keycard and quickly shake them away. It was not having to entertain thoughts like those that made me pick being a cheater in the first place. I don't need to be them. All I have to do is hunt. Problem is, I don't have a lead now. The bioanalyzer was a good move. I separate his DNA signature, Caucasian, male, type 1 diabetic, from Marjorie's and what must be her dog's, Cairn Terrier. I assume it's hers, doubt an animal would last long around him. The green light flashes. It accepts his scent. If he comes within 5 miles of the machine's molecular scanners, it will go off and sniff him out. It will lead me right to him. But Marjorie was the last victim whose records were available. I don't know anything about his next move till some douche's cell phone snaps that pic that will send me now, treading a hole along this bile-stained carpet. And that doesn't happen for another 2 days. 2 days, alone. Well, never alone, not with that voice chiming in loud and clear. It's the next day, and as foretold, I've forgotten her name, but the voice won't let me shake this one. Marjorie Janice Brown. Marjorie Janice Brown. Marjorie Janice Brown. Before I know it, my heels hang on a bar stool and my head swims in rye. Well, not my head, I tell myself, this isn't me. But I don't tell her her body softer and dress shorter than the first. I tell her lots of things, but the ones that matter are never true. My pace is better this time, and her apartment's smaller. I lose track of the days, the time, the masks, and the women. It's all a blur, a rolling, congealed mass. A libertine hurricane, a blank slate, a new bed, a new me. But just like that persona, it's all pretend, counterfeit. And I know in the back of my mind, in the words of that screeching voice, that when the vacation's over and this world is stripped away in a particle tidal wave, I'll have to deal with just myself again. And all the same questions always left unanswered. Those dark internal mysteries I'm far too shitty an imposter PI to ever solve, at least till the next gig. Or is it the next fix? What was I saying about those tachyon thirst fucks again? And somewhere in the eye of the storm, Marjorie's name becomes just that again, a name, and not a regret, at least for a little while as I cower under the shroud of a false skin, already fraying in preparation to be peeled away, its purpose through. My shoes wait empty for me, and I think of my father. One time when I was young and one world was more than I could take, my father took a belt to me, real farm-grown leather with a stainless steel clasp. He thought, I'm sure, he was beating something out of me by venting all his self-loathing away with the skin over my back. But truth is, all he was really doing was beating the worst parts of himself into me. And I think, somewhere deep down, in a place he hid from everyone and himself most of all, he knew it. And it only made him hate himself more, so the cycle kept on churning. Its revolutions ended abruptly one day on a hospital bed that had grown accustomed to his shape in the final month. Cirrhosis. Could have easily cultured him a liver, I had the money, but he was one of those extreme Church of Luddite technophobes. A real man accepted his destiny, he would say. I think his thumb was on the scale, giving destiny a hand. He wasn't a man built for his time. I tell her the ER needs me and make my escape. I repent for it by warning her not to fly Malaysian anytime next year. I guess I am my father's son. A few hours, Ryan Cooper hands will be in custody, and I hope I'll hate myself less. In a few hours, I'll be home, so I know that won't be true, but the vacation isn't over yet. Tess may have spoiled the ending, but the best stories are all about the journey there. Guess I know that path too now, thanks to my mechanical, literal bloodhound. This time, I'm not about to wait around by some cross streets for him to arrive at his predestination. I know where he's heading, so I'll search and track him. And when he steps foot anywhere within the radius of my 5-mile net, I'll spring the trap, and just before I give him to the cops, his ass will be mine. I stalk around the area, eyes glued to an impossible dude I pray no one gives a second look. Thankfully, their sights are all too hypnotized by their own archaic technology to notice me, or much of the world around them. I guess we're all on the run from reality. It's little comfort, but it's time. I need to face my own, and think about my steps for heading back. First is the lockbox. Once I have hands filed and processed, I'll need to leave a note inside telling Tess when to grab me and snap me back, a necessary move for any jumper who wants to muck around in the past more than a few minutes like the old days. They'll activate another tacky squall and EM bubble on their end, using the note for a kind of reverse artifact, and poof, I'm back in the chair, typically not seconds after I disappeared. The lab boys will have missed one hell of a 3-day bender. But in this scheme, the security and well-continued existence of the lockbox are key. In the most basic terms, it's a locker, portable and stored in a place guaranteed enough to last a few centuries without anyone fucking with it. For a not-so-small fee, the Chrono Guard and also Stash, the lot of them to help lower the risk of vagrants and stranded SOBs along the line. Keep business moving. For now, in this time, it's just a combination lock, but on the other end, I've had it biometrically upgraded. I program a client's thumbprint and voice sig, and the door will open when they need to grab the "okay, get me the fuck out of here" message after the job is done. When I get back, I delete their access. Easy peasy. This allows me to keep multiple jobs active, even as I hopscotch eras. Only problem is trust. A tick has to buy that a client who, let's face it, you're putting your whole existence on the line with anyway, will only take the message meant for them and leave the ones accumulating for future jobs alone. It's certainly something to think on with only occasional cold night sweats, but why risk getting yourself on the cron's shit list when I disappear over a damn scrap of paper? You'd really have to fucking hate me, not an impossible feat, to implicate yourself so obviously. It's got your biodata in there, for Christ's sake, fuck a smoking gun, though I guess if you're committed, it's a hell of a lavish murder-suicide. Back home, I haven't looked inside, that is, on my box in a while, but it was nice to know when I first bought it that I'd have a sweet little career, opening it up to find it stuffed to the gills with envelopes. But I never looked at them, ever. Know some guys who did leaf through and study all of theirs, learn their futures. Never ended well. I check every week and before each jump to see that it's there though. So far, so good. Somewhere far beyond the temporal horizon, Tess is gripping a retrieval note I haven't yet written. I can't help grinning like some idiot kid. I guess it's comforting, having a guardian angel. Still nothing on the scanner. I make a right and try east of the final rendezvous. Won't be long now. We're 30 minutes out. After I deliver the note, then comes the pickup prep. The motel will do. I still have the room for the full day. It's always the same routine. Shower, search, and suit up. Back into the clothes I wore on arrival. Helps the tachyons get a bead, they say. Seems it's much easier to send things back to their original time than out of sync. Apparently the line likes to preserve its natural order. Doubt the clothes are that big a deal though. What is important, damn fucking important, is that you come in clean. It's what I was saying before. You electron pulse shower to get as many air particles off you as possible, bombarding yourself with quantum elements from the present stored in the shower head. I suspect that's the bigger deal, particularly in helping to snatch you then, as opposed the moment the retrieval note was written. But I just work here. Don't ask me how they make the soup. And comes the search. Anything era, contemporary with a mass over 0.5 gram will get you in trouble and anchor you down to your current period. Like a dead weight, it will rip through your EM field and more than likely take a chunk of you with it. Knew a guy who left, or so he says, an era penny in his ass pocket. It's true though, whoever checks those things, arrived back in the chair bloody and wailing. The damn thing had fused into his big toe, and it's still there. Only upside is he'll never need tap shoes. So, moral of the story, I'll have to remember to give some time for prep and a double check. And for Tess, ideally, a shave. Bingo, but first things first. The analyzer grabbed him 1/3 of a mile away. Its signal will take me right to him. Question is this business or pleasure? Did I happen to nab him out buying more mini marshmallows for his homemade Rice Krispies treats, aka the one other thing redeeming thing about this era? Or is he out pursuing his calling? After 2 torturous days laying low following our blinking contest, is he here now to make another masterpiece? Either way, I'm gonna guess he brought his brush, that 6 to 10 inch collapsible serrated blade he painted Marjorie Brown red with, but that's fine by me. As I pick up speed, I'm not the least bit intimidated, 'cause in my pants I'm packing an arsenal. I hit a right. There's a cluster of pedestrians up ahead, tourists mostly, but also a fair collection of business types nearly mowing people over to make lunch. He couldn't pick off one of them. Then I zero on him and regret my joke. He's in the thick of the pack and I know exactly what he's doing, reconnaissance, choosing the next still life. He's finding his prey. And as I slowly approach, my breath growing labored and muscles drawing tight, that resurrected thrill, now cresting and violent, coursing waves through every cell and protein within my body, I can't duck the thought there's a reason I can ready him like a comic book. That maybe we are just one and the same. Fuck, and that thought's enough to distract me into straying too close. In a skyscraper's glass, he catches my reflection. He doesn't bolt, not yet, not in this thicket of he sees them, as that sounds far too familiar. He's too smart for that, too practiced at avoiding attention. He'll wait for a clearing, then hit the gas. But I'm pretty skilled at what I do too, Ryan, so I'm at the starting line whenever you're ready. The signal over 14 superscript TH Street flashes to walk, and he doesn't quite obey. He takes off like a vac train with a half a block head start, faster than my guesses gave him credit for. But as my loafers grind pavement, I'm not worried. He's fast, but only for his subspecies, and I've taken all my future vitamins. I corral him before I try to overtake him. Remember, I know where this is going. I block him from a right turn and consult the analyzer's holomap. We make a violent berth out onto South Morgan to a warm welcome of large eyes and just extending fingers. Perfect. The din of commotion rising from our wake streams by an impressionist peripheral blur. My eyes are only on one target. I can see the station up ahead and he isn't slowing down. Almost there. I shut down the map and stow the machine. With the attention of the crowd, better to go analog than digital knuckles over tech and give the woman what she paid for. Rough and tumble, right? I moved to overtake him, done with the ruse that this was a contest he could ever win, fate's hand moving from my shoulder to shove me in the back for an extra boost of speed. I reach out for his flaring jacket when something bright glares harsh against my eyes. The loafers stumble, his paintbrush. And getting an up-close view, once my vision returns, I see it's much closer to 10 inches than 6. We're heading for another crowd up on Maxwell, the conventional station right on that corner. I don't know why, but he doesn't seem to care. He has to know he's from this area. He stalked these streets. It's his hunting ground, so why? And then I'm him again, like a real dick for a change, and I see 2020 through his vision. And I finally have my answer that the victims were all of them crimes of passion, spur-of-the-moment opportunity, divine intervention, and unto him it has delivered once again. He's found his prey. A young girl at the back of the street traffic, can't be more than 14. I don't know her name or her blood type or a single goddamn thing about her, including how she makes it out of this. He knows this is the end, and he doesn't give a soggy shit. Doing it before the cops will only magnify his glory. He's ready for the world to see, and I'm giving him his spotlight. All he wants is a grand finale. All he wants is her. She can't hear me scream above the passing conversation of ugly combustion engine crates zooming down Maxwell. And the way he stares at her eyes, hungry and lustful for a final, carnal bite of their last meal there, wasn't anything in my pocket now I was certain could put him down that wouldn't level the block. The crowd was just too close. And she was closer, seconds now. He really was faster than I imagined. His instrument flashed toward its unmarred canvas, so much quicker than I could ever hope to stop it. But any PI worth half his shit knows every problem has its solution. And every mystery somewhere out there has an answer. All you have to do is look hard enough to see it. And I did look right at her, and in that immortal second I knew I didn't have to worry about dropping a pickup note into an empty lockbox. Just like the time in the alley with the dumpster and its second dent, when a tick's unstoppable, intrinsic curiosity got the better of me. Once I saw her, it was never a question. There was only ever one way this could end. I yank hard back on his billowed coattail to swerve the blade, and that smile slowly finds face again when he feels the weapon meet its hilt inside of me. He drags it right a little through most things vital and twists in an effort to pull free and continue lighting up the scoreboard. But I hold his hand steady and return the blade right back into the scabbard, back to rest in a place of physical pain that, in all my travels, I had no earthly idea could ever possibly be real. But it's all right. And I smile right back and bigger at Ryan Cooper hands. I trust my gut. And over his shoulder, right on cue, his would-be final victim, that 14-year-old girl, finally takes notice of her surroundings to scream and dash away far into the safety of the alerted crowd. This is gonna be good. With my trained detective's eye, I look everywhere on Han's face for a lingering trace of that smile. I come up empty. He cries uncle and drops the weapon before making a desperate final scramble for freedom and the chance to slay another day. I'm still smiling. I know he won't get it. The little girl has signaled a quartet of officers by now. They seem to take her tears and frantic screeching seriously. He can't push through the curtain of sacrilegious, breathing bodies fast enough for another foot race. He tries to fight, but he's nothing without his accomplice. It's a shitty craftsman that blames his tools. They take him down in under 4 seconds. I stumble forward for a closer look. The little girl can't find me in the thickening crowd. They snap the bracelets and begin to haul him away in a sight I've seen someplace in time before. I look down on a pair of ruined shoes. How's that for being a man? Someone finds the knife and they start unfurling yellow tape. A clamor rises from the converging gawkers. But just above it, I hear the obnoxious click of an imaginary digital shutter, and I can't help wonder if maybe that's the one. Guess that's a mystery I won't get around to. My head spins like before a jaunt, but I think I'll stay right here. My legs back me up by giving out beneath me. I drop my arm and let the 5-inch hole in my stomach, or my new belly button, get some air. It gurgles out a thank you. Then someone steps into the light to darken my vision even more. With all that's left, I force my head to tilt a fraction. Turns out it's worth it, and I immediately stand corrected as I gaze upon a thing of pure radiance, too impossibly brilliant for this bleaker time. Tessa Dunlap Abernathy Tess looks down at me with eyes that still say, thank you. She wears her pearl necklace I had left behind just to make perfection manifest, and I wish I'd gotten in that shave. At least now I know what to say, you're welcome for. I want to apologize as she ruins her shoes to wade into the evidence of my conclusion, but she doesn't seem to care. She breaks our gaze for a very swift moment to look back at Han's disappearing from existence into the station, and I'm honored in that instant to witness her face. It was nice to leave knowing that I was still on the right end of things, and it was nice to know here at the end that someone was out there waiting for me, with me, all along. I extend 3 fingers out to Tess, and she takes my hand. As she crouches down, I stare back at her and allow myself to drown completely in those 2 emerald whirlpools instead of the warm, metallic tide ebbing in my throat. As her tears fall to purify the murky pool below, I wonder if she knew about the unidentified man the entire time, and how that must have been for her send me on my mission. My hand slackens in her grip and my eyes close. I can't take the swelling light. She calls my name, but my ears are plugged now to all the racket. I feel it, a thrill all through me down to every quark, just like a tacky swarm coming to rip me away. And she knows. She knows I have to go alone. One last trip, one last case, and one final mystery on the other side. I wonder what I'll find.